Between Greece and Iran exists only one country, Turkey. It is also this country who controls all shipping in and out of the war in Ukraine. This is due to the fact that this country owns an area of land known as the Bosphorus Straits, the only land connection between Europe and Asia. The area of land was very significant during the Roman period. When the Roman Empire took control of the entire Mediterranean, this area of land was very important to the trade routes within the Roman Empire. However, it wouldn't be that important until two things: the founding of Constantinople and the rise of the Silk Road. Throughout the 1st and 2nd centuries CE, trade between Asia and Europe would begin to grow after contact between Rome and China increased. This trade increased the importance of the Eastern Roman provinces at the forefront of the transcontinental trade, areas like Syria, Egypt, and Anatolia. Moreover, the eastern part of their empire was better at collecting taxes and was more efficient than the western part of it. The accumulated wealth in eastern Rome also helped there to be stronger and bigger armies than those of western Rome, helping in its defense against foreign attacks, which in and of themselves were much less frequent in eastern Rome than they were in western Rome. Having considered all of this, an emperor named Constantine the Great decided to move the capital of his Roman Empire from Rome in the poorer and militarily weaker west to a new city established on the European side of the Bosphorus Straits, Constantinople, closer to the richer provinces in Greece, Anatolia, the Levant, and Egypt. From this area of land, the Roman government would be able to better exercise its power closer to the trade routes and rich people. From Constantinople, the Roman Empire continued to be successful, even after the collapse of Western Rome. From this city, the Romans would continue to show strength and take back important parts of Western Rome, including the entirety of the Italian peninsula and parts of modern Spain, continuing to facilitate trade from Asia into Europe through the Bosphorus Straits and other parts of the empire. Rome, however, would fight several wars with the Persian Empire, which at this point in time was called the Sasanian Empire. These wars really weakened both the Romans and the Persians militarily and economically. Unfortunately for Persia and Rome, right when they were at a weak point, the Arab Rashidun Caliphate invaded both Rome and Persia, taking over all of Persia and pushing into modern-day Pakistan and Central Asia. The Arabs also took over many Roman provinces, including the Levant, Egypt, and the rest of North Africa, and parts of Anatolia and modern Spain. To the Roman perspective, Constantinople was key to preventing Arab and Muslim expansions into Europe. From a military perspective, taking over the city was very difficult since it was surrounded on three sides by water, so any army would have to have some sort of naval capacity to attack. Its walls were also very difficult to break through, which stopped many armies. The city would continue to be Europe's first line of defense against invasions by attacking armies, since anyone who wanted to invade Europe had to cross these straits, and in crossing these straits, they had to fight the Romans, who were supported by the rest of Christian Europe to prevent any invader from entering. This situation would remain for a few centuries until the Ottoman Empire, a Turkish Islamic empire, got a foothold in the Balkans, taking over large portions of it and eventually, under the leadership of Mehmed the Conqueror, conquered Constantinople, ending the nearly 2,000-year-old Roman Empire, and in its place starting a new empire, which would benefit from the strategic position of Constantinople. With the control of Constantinople, the Turks grew stronger, having control of trade routes between Europe and Asia, and imposing religious rules on traders going through the land. This helped dissuade Western Europeans from utilizing the Turkish Straits, and pushed them to pursue other routes to Asia, such as westwards, as the Spanish did, and ended up finding a brand new continent. Back in the Old World, however, the Ottomans expanded into the Levant and took over Egypt, which connected their territories in Arabia to their territories in northwest Africa. In the meantime, the Turks had pushed deeper into the Balkan Peninsula and the Black Sea. Unlike the previous Muslim empires, the Ottomans had territory in Europe that they could resupply from to fight Austria and Russia, two of their historic rivals. Moreover, the capital, Constantinople, was a coastal city in the center of all the territories, which means that with a strong navy, they can exercise power over North Africa and the Middle East, as well as throughout the Black Sea. This scenario continued as the empire declined. Over time, the Silk Road trade routes would lose importance as European empires grew, and as maritime trade routes through places like the Suez Canal grew in importance. By World War I, the empire was badly weakened and fell after defeat to the British Empire. Out of the Ottoman Empire came the Republic of Turkey, and Constantinople was officially renamed to Istanbul nearly a decade later in 1930, which was a name that the local population had used to call it long before World War I. The city continued to be very important to the world, starting with World War II. During the Second World War, Turkey was neutral and entered the war months before it was over, but was still important, however, to both the Allies and the Axis. The Germans were concerned that a Turkish entry on the side of the Allies would start a new offensive from Turkey's territory in Eastern Europe, during a time when Germany itself was struggling against Russia. For the Allies, Turkey staying neutral was important to preventing a German-Arab alliance. The Arabs were under the control of the French and the British, and so sided more with Germany, who was fighting both of them. This may not have been as big a deal were it not for the fact that Germany was invading British-controlled Egypt, and the Egyptian population there, like the rest of the Arab world, thought positively of Germany against the British Empire. If Turkey joined the Axis, European Germany would have a connection to the Middle East and the rest of the Arab world to be able to push the British out of Iraq, Syria, and the Levant, creating a new front against the British and exciting Arab Egyptians against them. Such a loss would mean Britain would no longer have access to the Suez Canal and would be cut off from crucial resources from its overseas colonies, such as oil in the Persian Gulf, which may instead go into German hands at a time when both sides needed it to fight their war. Moreover, Turkey was important in one other aspect, the crux of everything explained thus far, the Turkish Straits. The USSR was allied to the United Kingdom and the United States against Germany, but America and Britain couldn't send supplies to the USSR because doing so would mean having to cross the Turkish Straits, which were closed to both the Allies and the Axis. If Turkey let a British or American ship through the Straits, then that would imply siding with the Allies against Germany, and potentially invite German pressure onto Turkey, such as economic sanctions or even military action, which the Turkish Republic, only 20 years old at this time, wouldn't have been able to handle. After the war, Turkey joined NATO. The alliance's inclusion of Turkey played a very vital role because of, you guessed it, the Turkish Straits. In order to understand Turkey's importance to NATO, we need to understand something about the USSR, and add to that Russia. The country is almost completely blocked off from all ocean trade routes. The only way for Russia, or back then the USSR, to receive shipping containers from other countries is from the port of Vladivostok on the Pacific Ocean, which is frozen a significant period of the time and is on the other side of the continent from the population center, requiring extra costs in transportation across Siberia, through snow and tundra, and the world's largest continent, to reach the population and economic center in the west of the country. Besides that, ships can reach the Baltic Sea and cross the Danish Straits, which are owned by NATO through its member state Denmark, and neutral state Sweden on the other side. Besides that, the only other remaining method, and the most practical route for that matter, is through the Turkish Straits into the Black Sea. In the event of a conflict between NATO and the USSR would be cut off from a large portion of international trade, and its navy would subsequently be limited to the Baltic and Black Seas. This is especially significant when it comes to the Turkish Straits due to NATO having a much larger presence in the Mediterranean than the USSR, and the presence of Soviet friends in the Middle East like Syria's Hafez al-Assad and Egypt's Gamal Abdel Nasser, both of which could be a pain against NATO allies in the region, and maybe even mess with their trade routes. As Egypt does own the Suez Canal, today Turkey maintains a similar geopolitical significance against Russia as it did against the USSR. Because it straddles Europe and Asia, through the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles, Turkey maintains one of the most, if not the most strategic part of NATO, engaging in the Middle East as a Middle Eastern country, yet also engaging in European affairs, as it did historically since the days of the Ottomans and their wars against the Austrians and the Russians, and as the Romans owned the land before them, overseeing the Silk Road trade routes from Asia, while also being the center of Orthodox Christianity, all of which proves the incomparable value of this land on a geopolitical level.